Hello, everybody. This is Rob Warren, the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church in Marion, North Carolina. What you're about to hear is an excerpt from a night of stand-up comedy that we did at the church as a part of a fundraiser, and I invite you to listen. There are many changes that have happened in life since then, many more stories, and I'll probably upload those soon. But until then, please just sit back, listen, and enjoy.
Somebody asked me what the difference between stories that I can't tell in sermons and stories that I can tell in sermons is. And basically the stories that I'm going to share with you tonight are different because the stories that I share in sermons tend to have a redemptive quality. Someone in them is behaving in a way that's consistent with the Scripture. The stories you're going to hear tonight also have examples of people behaving in accordance with the Scripture, but it falls more on the thou shalt not side than the thou shalt side. So I want to let you know that it's going to be a very different experience from what you hear from me on a Sunday morning. We are recording this, as you can see by the microphones that we've set up, live for the benefit of the church, trying to give a CD in return for donations. And so we really want to thank the Joy Group for allowing us the opportunity, and I really want to thank each one of you for coming out and being a part of this evening. And also to Laverne Alexander for being brave enough to be the first to speak. I greatly appreciate that. Well, now that Laverne has told you some stories about the other side of life, I'm going to start with teenage years. You see, I was, and what we're thinking about doing also is doing a second CD of this to allow my wife and my parents rebuttal time. That one's going to be more expensive than this one. But I was not an easy teenager to get along with, to live with in the house. Basically, the only people that I really got along well with was police officers. And that's because I had a lot of experience talking to police officers. And one night actually changed my life. There were a lot of clubs in Huntington, West Virginia that catered to a younger crowd. And by younger, I mean illegal. And we learned where all of those clubs were and where all of those bartenders worked. And so we never used a fake ID. We just went in and said we were with the band, whether we were or not, or said we were the band, whether they had a band or not. And they just let us in the door. Well, one night, as the designated driver, I had a night that would change my life because I realized something. We were on our way back from a club in Ironton, Ohio on Route 52, and it runs right along the Ohio River back towards Huntington. Well, we got pulled over because we're underage. It's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, and we happened to be from out of state. And it's not like the officers didn't know that this club catered to a younger clientele. So I'm talking to the police officer in a very normal voice, being very respectful, when my friend, which is the reason that I'm the designated driver, decides to ask the nice officer, if he can wear his hat. So this is the first occasion that I've ever had to take a field sobriety test. I get out of the car and stand in front of the cruiser, and as I'm standing there on one foot with one arm out, touching my nose with the other finger, I hear the car door open. Now, I've got to assume as a police officer, whenever you've done a regular stop and you hear a car door open, it's not a good sound to hear. But my friend had decided that as long as the officer's attention was focused on me, this would be the perfect opportunity for him to relieve the growing tension in his belly. So he hops over the guardrail, lands on the ground roughly, tumbles down the bank and into the Ohio River. And I'm still standing there with one arm out. And the officer said, "Aren't you going to go get your friend?" And I said, "No, sir, he's not my problem at this point." It was at that point that I decided that I was no longer going to be completely responsible for my friends that were inebriated. I was going to have a little bit of fun at their expense because I kept having these evenings at my expense. So a week later, the same friend decides to get too intoxicated to open his eyelids, and it's Halloween. So we drag him out into the yard, wrap him up in toilet paper, put him in a lawn chair, and we have a mummy. And I realized at that point, I can really have a lot of fun with this. Well, another friend of mine got caught by his mother drinking, and she decided that she was going to teach him a lesson. So she took him out to her favorite club. One of the reasons it was her favorite club is because she could go dancing, and brought me along as the designated driver. Well, she ordered 2 Long Island iced teas. She drank a quarter of hers and got up to go dancing. My friend drank 3/4 of his and swapped glasses. At this point, I realized math can be fun, because for every 1 complete Long Island iced tea he had 3. When she got to 2, he'd had 6. When she got to 3, he'd had 9. And at that point, I quit counting. My job is to get him home safely, not necessarily to get him home without incident. So as we're on the way to the truck, my 2-seater, I tell him, give me your wallet, give me your keys, give me all that stuff. You want to make sure that you don't lose them. And I stick them in my cargo pants, which most of you know by now are pretty much a staple of my wardrobe. I get him in the truck. We make about 1.5 blocks, and he says, Bo, I'm going to be sick. And I said, you know the rule. I have a rule. I don't like for people to throw up in my car. That was before we had Donovan. He doesn't seem to pay attention to the rule. But I've spent a lot of time leaning against my car watching my friends get sick in women's club parking lots and churches and that type of thing. And it's one of the reasons that I was so glad to have a truck, because you don't have to sit there. You just throw them in the back. Now, as a public service announcement, let me tell you, if you ever put a very inebriated person in the back of a pickup truck, you want to make sure to secure them, because they will get out of the truck when they see something interesting or something shiny. And it doesn't matter if you're going down the interstate or sitting at a stoplight, and you're kind of stuck in that circumstance. So, fortunately, I had some ratchet tie-downs that we used for cargo. Now, if you're going to secure an inebriated person in the back of a pickup truck with ratchet tie-downs, you also want to make sure that the releases are well out of arm's length from this person. So basically, I put him against the tailgate, trussed him up, and left him in the back of the truck. So I'm driving him home, and we make it about maybe 1/4 mile from his house. And he gets sick. And I'll admit it's probably not his fault. The parking garage may have been a bad idea. But I just thought it was funny to drive him around where it's light, it's dark, it's light, it's dark, and then you turn, and then it's light, it's dark, it's light, it's dark, and you turn. This was also the night he decided to stop drinking around me. But he got sick. And it's all over him, and it's all over the back of the pickup truck, and I've got to get him cleaned up, and I've got to get the truck cleaned up, and I've got his wallet with me. So, of course, we just ran through the car wash. And when I was taught in college that if you give a person that's had too much to drink coffee, all it does is keep them awake. It doesn't sober them up. If you throw them in the shower, all it does is get them wet. It doesn't sober them up. But I can assure you, if you put an inebriated person in the back of the truck and run them through a car wash, they are wide awake and angry. So as he's sitting in the back of the truck screaming, "This isn't funny! This isn't funny!" I'm sitting in the front of my truck going, "Yes, it is! Yes, it is!" And I told him, just relax. I did not get the hot wax. And that man drove from West Virginia to North Carolina to be in my wedding.